Yes.
Welcome, everyone, to Mindful Leadership Beyond Borders. I am Betska, the Guru Coach, together with my handsome host, Raj Vashisht from India, and I'm on Vancouver Island in Canada. and,
And handsome guest, Roman.
and a handsome guest. Oh, dear. We would love to introduce you to our guest, Roman S. Shapoval. And in Ukrainian, we would say Roman, and I am of Ukrainian descent, so we were having a little bit of a chat about that before we went on air. But you could start off by checking out Roman and his wife's website, thepowercouple.ca. But let me tell you more about him. Roman was a computer salesman who suffered from addictions to the same screen technology he thought was advancing civilization. Now, how similar does that seem to the rest of you, right, watching this? His wife, Bogdana, believed in Big Pharma's ability to heal her so-called chemical imbalance. We also have heard that many times. Until they both found that Big Pharma, Big Pharma, as you have written here, and Big Tech were only advancing their disease. So, wow, huh? After decades of poor sleep, Bogdana's health came crashing down on their honeymoon. Can you imagine being on your honeymoon and your health comes crashing down? Oh my God. And Roman applied the only medicine he knew he could trust, which was sunlight. Later, they would both learn how to remove the invisible light of devices from their home so that they could live life to the fullest. Today, Bogdana and Roman help modern humans, like all of us, restore their ancestral vitality by powering on with light and powering off at night. So, Roman, wow, what a job you have. What a service you are providing to humanity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Betska. I appreciate that.
So the first question, you probably somewhat answered already through the bio that I just read, but what got you interested in the field of EMFs, or maybe explain what EMFs are to our followers, to our viewers?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks to everyone who's listening today and taking the time to learn and empower yourself with all the tools at your disposal, because Raj and Betska are also, as you know, providing a great service to humanity, bringing us all together here. So, yeah, I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you for whoever is listening today. I honor you for stepping up. Yeah, EMFs are a complex subject. They often get don't looked at. They don't get looked at because they are so complex and overwhelming and invisible. But basically, EMF stands for electromagnetic field or electromagnetic force. When there's a story about Isaac Newton, and Isaac Newton was under an apple tree, and the apple fell, and that gave him the idea of gravity. Now, Isaac Newton wasn't studying gravity his most of his career. What he was studying was called the ether, or the sixth element, or the fifth element, what he called the quintessence. And he was trying to find out what governed all physics. And really, what Isaac Newton stumbled upon was EMF, or the electromagnetic force, because without the electromagnetic force, gravity wouldn't exist. Electromagnetic fields govern how the planets interact. If it wasn't for EMFs, and EMFs are good and quote unquote bad. EMF that we get from the sun, the electromagnetic field we get from the sun in the form of visible light and invisible light, like infrared wavelengths that we can't see. We have UV, we have blue light that we get from our screens and the sun. We get gamma rays, cosmic rays. We have radio waves, television, Wi-Fi router, smart meters. So yeah, so we live in a soup of frequency, and our bodies also emit an electromagnetic field from the heart. The Heart Math Institute has quantified this in their research, showing that our heart field goes out at least 8 feet, and probably I think in infinity they just couldn't measure that far, or that wide. And so we are surrounded by these things. But to keep it simple, EMF, when talked about in the mainstream, that's people think of cell phones, right? They think of wireless, but or cell towers, right? But there's so much more that's encompassed in this, and that's why I've really become passionate about it because there's a lot of confusion, and people, when they get confused, they reach for solutions prematurely. A lot of times they're either afraid or, you know, or they don't want to talk about these things at all because uncomfortable
Yeah.
subject. And
Hmm.
I understand we're all doing podcasts today with technology, but as a former computer salesman, I noticed that companies were starting to take shortcuts with technology, with their software and their hardware. So, right now I'm broadcasting to you through a hardwired, secure connection. I'm very comfortable here in my house, and all the EMFs I've reduced to where I feel comfortable. But we'll get into that. But yeah, so you can just think of EMF as the father or the mother of gravity, and it's a field that we all live in, and our body emits, and the planets do as well. The issue is since the 1800s and the industrial age, and since we got the incandescent light bulb, everything has changed because when we got that electric light, it needed to be powered by the AC, or called alternating current motor, which Tesla invented. And Tesla, Nikola Tesla, not the car, was Thomas Edison's business partner for a while. And if it wasn't for that AC power generation, which is what we have right now in our walls, electrical wiring, that electric light wouldn't be possible. So since 1889, since the advent of the light bulb, EMFs have exploded into radio, radar, satellites, television. Now we have the Internet of Things. We have cellular communications ranging from 1G, in 2028, 6G will come out. So there's a lot of different frequencies that we're living with. And I just mentioned the historical aspect because humanity, for 200,000 years, we lived without these frequencies. It's only in the last, 150 years, which is almost nothing in our existence, that we've been living with these fields. So it's important for us to understand how it impacts not only our biology but our physiology. But why I got involved in it? Well, Bodana, like you mentioned, she crashed and burned on our honeymoon. We didn't understand why. We came to know eventually that it was these SSRIs, or serotonin reuptake inhibitors, the psychotropic drugs that her psychiatrist put her on. Actually, it was her general doctor put her on as an experiment to see what would happen. Oh, it's probably genetic, right? There were lots of assumptions made. But long story short, the only thing that helped get Bodana off the medications completely was getting outside every morning. We came back to Ontario in January. It was cold. We came back from Italy where it was warm, and Bodana was super depressed. And the only thing that helped was getting outside. And she dragged herself out in the winter, in the morning, where the sky was dark. You couldn't see the sun, but it was still having a huge impact. And I started reading all kinds of literature about from the 1800s, even talking about how circadian rhythms and being outside helped people's psychiatric condition, mental health, more than anything else. And that's what, that was 10 years ago. And since then, we've learned so much, and it's become a passion of ours because we see how much it helps other people. So
So,
that's,
sorry, go ahead.
no, that's it.
So I'm curious about. Thank you for doing all this research. This is vitally important for everyone. It's a topic that I'm very interested in. Excuse me. But what types of illnesses are people experiencing from an overload of EMFs? What are the bigger
So
ones?
that's great. Yeah, that's a great question. So to give you some historical background, again, in the 1800s, in the late 1800s, the telegraph was rolled out, And with the telegraph spun basically hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles of copper wire around the earth, through the oceans, through continents.
Oh.
And this was the first time that humans harnessed an external electric force to conduct communications. Now, what happened when these telegraphs were deployed, the force was so strong that there's even accounts of monkeys in India alighting on fire where they were sitting on the telegraph because it was so uncontrolled. Um, and there were some more subtle effects too, because people in New York City at the time, this was in the late 1800s, there was a common medical condition called neurasthenia, and it was the condition of nerve damage and symptoms similar to anxiety. And if you look
Mm.
at other countries like in Russia or China or in Europe, they still officially have a diagnosis called neurasthenia to today. However, in the late 1800s, right as the telegraph was being rolled out, Sigmund Freud, he noticed that people in these cities, especially women who were very hormonally sensitive, they started getting chest pains. They started becoming quote unquote hysterical and very nervous.
Mm.
And his explanation was that he blamed it on their bad thoughts because there were women having inappropriate thoughts and they were just hysterical. But it's quite a coincidence that Sigmund Freud he invented the term anxiety nervosa right at the time the telegraph was being rolled out and people were having issues.
Wow,
So,
look at that. Yeah.
yeah, so I know many people say, well, correlation, not causation. However, it's something we need to look at, especially when some of the top physicians of the period, like George Baird in New York City, he was a prominent physician. He cited the same symptoms of neurasthenia as he was seeing in anxiety. And many,
Mm.
many scientists came out against this and they said, we need to look at these external electrical frequencies to
Mm-hmm.
see what they're causing. And they got laughed at, right? So
Oh, I'm
that
sure.
was something way long ago. But fast forward to today, well, actually, just to give you a brief kind of overview. So in World War One, we had the deployment of radio, and we had the Spanish flu that happened then. Uh,
Mm.
I encourage anybody to who's interested in this topic, buy the book The Invisible Rainbow. It's by Arthur Furstenberg, who he passed
Mm.
away, but it's a great book. And it describes all these conditions. So, influenza, um, the word influenza gets its name from being the influence of the stars. So in the 1700s, physicians knew that when the sunspots increased, the solar energy, again, an EMF, intensified. People all over the place in the world at random seemed that they would just get this massive flu outbreak. They couldn't understand why.
Mm. Mm.
So they called it influenza. It was the influence of electromagnetic energy. In
Wow.
1980, yeah. And then we had the radio, which is a crazy amount of electromagnetic energy, and people got sick. Now, am I saying that that was the direct cause? Uh, I believe so, but I would argue that if at the very least, one could argue that it exacerbated any condition of illness. Uh, we had the radar that came out in the World War II. You had massive increases of heart attacks. They called it soldier's heart. Mandel Cohen of Harvard, he was commissioned by Dwight Eisenhower to research this topic, and he came up with the fact that the soldiers who were they were supposed to be in great physical condition, they couldn't even run more than a minute and a half on a treadmill. Some of these soldiers, these are
Wow.
the same soldiers that were exposed to radar. They're radar operators.
Wow.
But the list goes on and on and on. 5G, when that came out in 2020, or actually in 2019, the first place it was deployed was Wuhan, China. Where was the first outbreak of the C-19 virus?
Mm.
It was
Right
in
on.
Wuhan, China. So,
Wow.
again, it's hard to not to look at these facts, right? One
Mm-hmm.
has to.
Right.
If you want to be a scientist, and science means comes from Sierre, to know. If you want to know or get to know the
Mm.
truth, you don't have to be a guy in a white coat or woman who's a doctor. You just look at the facts, and
Yeah.
there's so many things. I can go on and on, but the biggest issue people suffer with right now is sleep and fatigue.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
we're constantly
Mm.
exposed to these things. A lot of us have gotten used to it, but we just have this. I find that people we work with, our clients, a lot of them have a very low level of fatigue that they just can't seem to snap out of. They
Mm.
have a lack of zest for life, a lack
Mm-hmm.
of empathy. A lot of children now have a lack of empathy, and it's something that these we're again are beings of frequency. So when our energy gets zapped from the outside, we have less energy to give from the inside.
Right on. Well, listen, we're going to take a brief pause. And folks, you've been watching our amazing guest, Roman S. Shapoval, and we'll be right back with part two to talk more about EMFs and the harm to this planet. And most important, what do we do about it? We'll be right back.